Good evening, Windsor Gardens. How's everyone doing? All right, full house. So, as CL mentioned, I am so sorry I'm not our neighbor and Attorney General Phil Weiser, but I am your state representative. So I'm here and live in the flesh. If you've seen a lot of me in your mailbox, I'm that guy. So I'm sorry about that. Sorry in advance. I'm seeing a ton of folks here that typically come to this meeting for the Democratic meeting or for the Democratic monthly meeting, but I'm also seeing a lot of new faces. So for those of you who hear me talk a lot, you're going to hear this again. I think I owe you a brief bio of who's representing you at the state capitol. So my name is Sean Camacho. My mother is from Puerto Rico. My father is from Guam. I was raised in a military family. I myself worked really, really hard in high school and had the opportunity to go to the United States Air Force Academy. So in my time in the Air Force, I deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, East Africa. I did a year of counterterrorism work in Colombia before I decided to do something different. So I went into the reserves, and then I went to law school. So now I'm an attorney here in town. I do commercial litigation at a firm, and I'm also your state representative. So picking up on that military thread there, I am the deputy commander of my unit at Buckley Space Force Base in the reserves, and I will be joining the ranks of the retired on October 1st because that is when my retirement orders are good till. So I'll be very excited about that. When I was running for the seat, so maybe if you don't know, we live in House District 6. So we are at the farthest east corner of House District 6. So if you don't know what this district looks like, go from the Capitol building to the Aurora line. Colfax is generally our northern border, and then our southern border is either 6th Avenue or 8th Avenue, depending on what side of Colorado Boulevard you're on. And then it gets a little funky on the east side because we have Lowry, we have Pelican Point, we have Fairmont Cemetery, we have Windsor Gardens, and it goes all the way to the Aurora line. So it is the central core of East Denver. So what I'd like to say is your neighbors in House District 6 are Congress Park, Cheeseman Park, Cap Hill, Montclair, North Hilltop, Lowry, and all the great neighborhoods in between. And Windsor Gardens, of course, and all the great neighborhoods in between. So when I was running last time, I had really a few things I wanted to focus on. There's 3 commitments I made to everyone in this room. If you heard me speak at any time, I said I would do 3 things. One, I would be accessible. And I think I've done that. I've attended more than 100 community meetings. I've helped thousands of constituents who've reached out where state benefits aren't reaching them. I have been accessible. You can reach me via email. I try to answer emails typically within 48 hours. Sometimes it's a little longer if we're in session. But I've really delivered on that. Second one is I will always tell you the truth, even if you don't like the answer. And you're going to have an opportunity to ask me any question you like, and I'll be an open book for you. And the last one is I'll fight like hell for you and your family. And I've been doing that for the last 2 years, and I'm very, very excited about talking to you about what it's looked like at the state capitol for the last 2 years. So if you read the news or if you watch national or the federal government, there's so much to be negative about. There's so much to just be downtrodden about our system. But what I really, really love about state government is we actually work. The bills that I have passed on your behalf will make far more difference in everyone's lives than any of the bills that have passed at the federal government, except for HR 1. And that's not a good impact. But state government is far more likely to make an impact on your life. So last year, that was my first year in the legislature. So when you're a first term or your first year in your first term legislator, no one really knows what they get. Sometimes they think you can get a dud. So you get 5 bills. So I had 5 bills last year, and that's kind of what everyone gets. So what did I do with my 5 bills? Full disclosure, I really dislike Tabor. I have spent majority of my professional career as an attorney fighting against Tabor. We challenged Tabor in federal courts for 13 years, and I was on that trial team for 8 of those years. For only after 13 years of litigation, the federal court said, go find a different plaintiff, being the General Assembly, not school districts, not smaller districts. Go try again. So the first bill I ran on your behalf last year was a resolution to authorize a lawsuit to overturn Tabor with the General Assembly as the plaintiff, following exactly what the federal court said. We had enough votes in the House and the Senate to pass that bill, but unfortunately, not everyone believes this is true. There are a lot of Democrats out there that will not vote to overturn Tabor, especially not in an election year. And that definitely happened last year. That bill was shut down by leadership, even though we had the votes to pass it. But I can tell you, when I win re-election, that'll be the first bill I'm bringing back, and I'm running for leadership. So that will not happen again. Thank you. The second bill I ran was a community-based mental health program for members of the military, and really what we are expanding on is benefits that you will see at the VA. So at the VA level, you have to have a legal connection to that military member. Under the state grant that I passed last year, you don't have to. You have to have a relationship. Because in my experience, I've had lots of airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Guardians that have really, really close family members, but they're not married. But they feel the impact of deployments. They feel the impact of, unfortunately, when we had a member of my unit commit suicide. These events affect everyone. It affects the morale of the unit, affects the community. So we at the state level took a more broad approach. Because if you are having a mental health crisis, waiting 6 months for the VA is not help. So under this program, you can go to a community-based mental health system, either virtually or in your neighborhood, and get care much faster than you could at the VA. And how did we fund that? We funded that through, if you remember 2 years ago, you authorized a fee on guns and ammunition. So if we are going to sell guns and ammunition in the state, then those proceeds better go to something good, and they did in this instance. My bill was selected to implement the grant program, so we did that last year. And it's spent over the interim getting set up, and hopefully within the next year we're going to see some really, really positive results on that bill alone. Carrying on in the gun space, how many people have ever been to a gun show? How many people have seen something illegal happen at a gun show? A gun show. So what we have found in Colorado is there are some counties that take gun shows less seriously than others. And you will see high-capacity magazines, or you'll see illegal firearms, or you'll see assault weapons that you should not be able to purchase at a gun show. So I ran the gun show cleanup bill last year, and what did that do? Because what we were seeing was a lot of people weren't making those purchases in the gun show. They were going out in the parking lot and doing it there. And if you realize, if you go out into a parking lot to do any form of commerce, you're just asking for trouble. Typically, those are cash transactions. Typically, bad things are going to happen. So under the gun show cleanup bill, what is now required is a safety plan that is filed with every county. The cameras are required to be in the parking lot, and it is now a misdemeanor, a criminal offense for whoever's putting on that gun show not to follow the law. So that was our cleanup of gun shows of last year. Yeah. This year, I took a slightly different tact because, as I mentioned, and this is just being honest, election years are hard. I feel like a lot of us feel strongly about Tabor, but Tabor polls incredibly well because every time someone funds a poll, the only question they ask is, do you trust your state legislator? Do you trust those people at the Capitol not to raise your taxes? And the answer is, unfortunately, no. They don't trust people like me, or they don't, because I think some of my colleagues don't do a good job being accessible and answering your questions. But when you get asked people that polling question, you get 60% of Coloradans who like Tabor. So you can imagine in an election year, some of my colleagues will not vote for that bill. So I took a different tack this year, and I did things that will impact your lives directly. So if you knew this or not, Colorado is the 8th most targeted state for financial fraud among older adults. Did anybody know that? Did anybody know how much money our neighbors have lost over the last few years? Between $200 and $300 million. And this is typically how it happens. It is a phone call, a panicked phone call. Hi, I know your grandchild is on spring break in Cancun and they have just been arrested. They gave me your number. If you send $30,000 to Moldova in 15 minutes, I'll get him out of jail before they transfer him to Mexico City. That is all far too common. If you receive one of those calls, you know what I'm talking about. And what we found out in committee, and we found out when we were stakeholding this bill, is one of the features of fraud is creating that sense of urgency, whether it's a romance scheme, whether it's a family member in trouble. It is that sense of urgency that people want to help. The fraudsters are using AI and social media and every tool in the book to prey on your best and most important attributes of wanting to help your community and help your family. And for me, it was an issue of dignity, because if you have worked your entire life for a nest egg through retirement, it should not be able to be taken away in 10 minutes. So I passed the Asset Act, which is signed into law about 2 weeks ago, and that bill does essentially one thing. If you bank at a credit union or bank, community bank, it doesn't matter, any financial institution in Colorado, and you are 70 or older, and that financial institution has a good faith basis to believe you're being a victim of fraud, they can preemptively place a 90-day hold on that transaction. And the intent of the bill is make a phone call. Ask that person, I see you are trying to send money to a romance scam that it has flagged in our system. Can we help you? What are you trying to accomplish? They have 90 days to make a phone call. They have 90 days to start an investigation. And they have 90 days to save your life savings. Yeah. That is the kind of things that state government is doing that will make a tangible impact in your life. And hopefully after this bill has some time to work its way through the system, we will start seeing a curve in whether or not Colorado can get to the lower 48 when it comes to financial fraud among older adults. And what I said in committee, I was very, very honest about this. That type of protection should not just be if you're 70 or older. This is a first step, not a last step, in what we are going to do next. If you've seen my flyers, you realize I have two very adorable children. And my oldest is starting to get really into electronics and computers and AI, frankly, and chatbots. Does anybody know what a chatbot is? If you don't know, it's okay. A chatbot is, think ChatGPT, think Grok, think Claude. These are those apps you can log into and ask questions and have real conversations. And unlike when I was growing up with a kid, or as a kid, and you were having a tough day, you just call your best friend. Say, hey, I'm having a tough time. Kids these days are a little more isolated. They're far more likely to be open to a chatbot than they are to their parents or a friend or a neighbor. So what we have been seeing is a very alarming national trend. So those young people, we've had at least 2 Colorado families that have been impacted by this, that have had their kids sexually groomed and talked into suicide by AI chatbots. And this bill came to my attention when I had a town hall last summer with Senator Ball. And at that town hall, we were talking about the state doing AI regulation. And people in this community said, wait a minute, what about our kids? I just listened to this New York Times, The Daily podcast, about how this is happening. Why can't you do that too? And they were right. So I took this issue on, and we have passed, it's either the first or the second in the nation bill. And this bill does 3 things. It says you shall not have a sexually gratifying relationship with a child in Colorado. You shall not talk a child into self-harm. And the third one came from stakeholding this bill. You shall not create a sexualized image of a child. Now you may be thinking that third one's probably already covered under law. Well, this is how it is manifested itself. Think of a young person in middle school or high school who takes a photo of their classmate and asks ChatGPT, put my classmate in a see-through bathing suit. And now you have a sexualized image of a child that gets posted online and violates and is one of the most disgusting things you can do, and frankly, stupidest things you can do as a child. But it has been happening, and it was a concern for many stakeholders. So that is now a feature of the bill. And how do we enforce this? It is a $1,000 per interaction, no cap, with the chatbot. So if you've had grandkids or if you text yourself, you realize how very quickly a young person can text, how many text interactions they can have with the chatbot over a day, over 2 days, over 3 days, over a month. No cap. That means every single child in Colorado would go towards that cap, and it is being enforced by our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, and his team. That is industry curbing behavior, because if you are a chatbot company and you realize that your damages could multiply exponentially in a very short amount of time, you will not have your chatbots operate that way in Colorado. And that bill is working its way across the country because, again, I mentioned, we're seeing at the federal level, they're not acting as fast as the state level. So we've had states like Georgia, we've had states like Utah, states like New Jersey, we've had states like Washington and Oregon have looked at our bill because our bill is the toughest in the nation, and they're using that as a template to move forward and implement those protections in their states as well. So that is something I've been incredibly proud of. And full disclosure, that bill I thought was going to get 100 yes votes. It was incredibly painful to pass because a lot of people have feelings about how strong a bill can be. How far can you go with legislation? I think the biggest criticism that I received and the biggest number of no votes was because it doesn't go far enough. And I agree with them. But here's the reality. It takes an act of the legislature and a signature from our governor to pass a bill. And our governor had very strict limitations on how far he would go. So we pushed this bill to the absolute limit and then one step further with what we could do with the protections here. And like I said before, this is a first step, not a last step, because at the state legislature, we are trying to legislate at the speed of AI, and we will inherently always be behind. So next year, we're going to come with the cleanup. The year after that, we're going to come up with the cleanup, because what I've learned through this process is if you take social media, for example, think 20 years ago, if state legislatures were forward thinking and saying, hey, our kids are being abused on social media, we're seeing social media being taken over and used for, horrible purposes for either political or whatever, we would have done things differently. And we have that opportunity now with AI and chatbots, and we're putting a stake in the ground saying, not again. We're not going to make that mistake again, and we're going to get started on legislation that's going to make a huge difference in people's lives. So those were thank you. Those were the two hardest bills I did this year. And I mentioned last year, now everyone thinks you may be a dud, so you only get 5. This year I had 20. I will not bore you with the 20 bills I've had, but they range from protecting LGBTQ rights to creating a grant program with very minimal funding to make sure those businesses on East Colfax can make payroll. Thank you. I looked at the experience that we saw on 16th Street when the city decided to redo that and all the businesses that closed and all the economic opportunity that ended. And I said, not on East Colfax. So I passed Climber 2 this year to give them a grant program to be able to keep those doors open while this is happening. The other bill that I was incredibly proud of doing, which many of my colleagues said, don't do it. It's already failed twice. If you pick up a bill that's failed twice, it's probably going to fail again. I did it anyway. I picked up a bill that gave Denver teachers and staff a $2,500 pay raise for the next 5 years without raising your taxes. And that was incredibly important because when I was running, one of the big things I cared about was, can you afford to live in this community? Can your kids afford to live in this community? And more often than not, the answer was no. So we did something about it. We saw that para contributions, especially if you were part of the Denver Public Schools, did you guys know this? Denver Public School teachers and staff, since they merged with para, have overpaid their share by $1 billion. By $1 billion. So they have been the backbone of para's financial reserves since they have joined the school division of para. So what this bill did is say, hey, look, we are going to recognize your overpayment, and in state law, it was requiring them to make those payments. We changed state law to cut those payments back. I worked out a deal with the superintendent of Denver Public Schools to make sure all the savings would go to teacher salaries and Denver teacher staff, and that's how we paid for it without raising your taxes. It is that level of creativity that we have to display at the state level to make sure we are delivering for you. And I'll talk about the special session as well. Every time we have been at the legislature that I've been there, for the last 2 years, we have cut $3.5 billion from the budget. $1 billion the first year, $1 billion in a special session in between sessions, and then $1.5 billion this year. And it'll probably be $1.5 billion next year too. So what we did in special session, that first $1 billion that we had to cut last year, we swept all the couch cushions. We found all the money, all the unfunded programs. And we made up $1 billion. That's becoming more efficient. In special session, we had to do it again because HR 1 passed. When HR 1 passed, it crushed our state budget because we could no longer count on federal Medicaid funding. And that really pissed me off because if you know anything about Colorado, we are a payer state. Does anybody know what that means? We pay far more in federal taxes than we get back in federal taxes. So as a payer state, we are subsidizing healthcare in Alabama while the federal government is cutting healthcare in Colorado. So what did I do during special session? I passed a tax credit bill. And you would not run your business this way. You would not run your home this way. But under Tabor, we have to run our state government this way. And what it did is essentially said, give me 80 cents today, right now, and I'll give you $1 credit on your taxes in a future year. And what we do with those 80 cents? We paid for healthcare so people didn't lose their healthcare over the interim. We tried to reduce premiums, and I know many of you have seen premium increases. We tried to cost curve that over the special session by doing this. And the most beautiful part about this bill, even though it makes no financial sense, is that $1 that you get in the future, that $1 was going to be above the Tabor cap. So it was going to go out the door to people who didn't need the refunds anyway. So we essentially paid up front to pay for healthcare now, leveraging future Tabor dollars. That may not be there in the future, but that's what we did. Okay, so I've covered a lot of ground. And I don't necessarily want to keep going unless you want me to. I'm happy to fulfill my second promise to you. Question and answer time. What do you got? Tell me. I saw this person back here.
Data centers.
Yes.
Data centers.
Okay. Okay. Data centers. Just by a show of hands, just curious. I'm using this as a poor man's poll. Who here understands data centers and is in favor of data centers or against data centers? Who here is against data centers? Oh, wow. Okay. Who's here for data centers? Who here uses AI every day? Who here uses AI every day but doesn't know it, but don't know it? If you go to Google and you type in a Google search, the first set of searches is an AI-generated search. All right, so there are two bills working their way through the legislature this year. One bill said data centers could only run on renewable energy. Hey, I'm no energy scientist, but I can tell you that's not possible. Under current resources, you cannot run a data center with that amount of electricity that's required 24 hours a day on renewable energy. So what that bill effectively did was ban data centers in Colorado. The second bill, there were two competing bills, would encourage data centers in Colorado because if you don't live in Denver or if you don't live in Denver and you live in the metro area, the hands that I raised, my poor man's poll, that would be reversed. So under this other bill, it would use state dollars that we do not have to incentivize the building of data centers here in Colorado. Good or bad news for all of you, both bills failed this year. And I was really, really excited about that because I am not a fan of when data centers come to town and use all of our scarce water resources. They're not paying their own way and are using tax dollars that we're not using for K-12 to fund new data centers here in Colorado. That is a problem. But we all have to recognize AI is going to be part of our lives. It's going to be part of the state GDP. It's going to be part of the economy going forward, and you cannot avoid that. It is going to happen. If you lived in the 90s and you realized how many people were laying fiber to allow or facilitate the internet boom, this is kind of what's happening now, but with data centers. But I take a different approach. We can have both. We can have really, really strict environmental regulations and requirements on data centers, and we can allow them in certain conditions. Because it's much better that we regulate and control them here in Colorado than have them built across the border in Wyoming with no regulations, no care about environmental impact or water usage, and have those same electrons and information cross the state border when you're doing a Google search. I'd much rather have that done here, have that done right, than have it done somewhere else. I'm not in favor of incentivizing data centers with money we don't have. I am in favor of data centers doing it right and honoring our commitment to our environment, because that is what is critical. It is absolutely critical for my kids and for your grandkids and for everyone else. Our environment, we only get one of them. You can't go to Walmart and get another one, and we have to take care of the one we have. So that's where I stand on that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Ice. All right. That is a broad question, so I'm going to answer it the way I would like. I think I was very surprised. I thought we were going to have the first woman president in the history of the United States when I was first elected. And we were really excited as a Democratic caucus because we had all these grand plans about what we would do. And I think like many of you, the nightmare began 2 years ago. It has been scramble mode. That first year when our current administration came to power, every time we turned around, one of the fundamental civil rights that we cared about as Americans was being eroded at the federal level. So state government stood up. State government enshrined in state law the right to gay marriage because there was a concern that would go away. We enshrined in state law the right to bodily autonomy and reproductive health care. We enshrined in state law protections as far as we could go, and probably a little further than we could go, on ICE. Because one of the worst days at the legislature for me was last February when ICE agents were stopping a school bus in Virginia Vale so they could pick up, so they could get parents dropping their kids off at school. That was a horrible day. having panic phone calls from Denver Public School school board members saying, what the hell is going on? Can the state help? And the feeling of just helplessness was palpable. So, sorry. So we took charge of that, and we took that as a lesson about what we need to do going forward. So last year we passed 276 that said if the state government has records of immigrants or newcomers into our state, those cannot be shared with ICE. Federal government cannot take and use state resources for their efforts. We've limited the amount of collaboration. This year we tried to go even further to be able to sue ICE under state law. It's called a reverse 1983 claim. We will continue to push. We had a bill that went through that died at the end that would prohibit ICE from wearing face masks. We will continue to push these bills as long as this administration is in charge. And that is my commitment to you. And apologies for getting choked up, but February was really tough because those kids look like my kids. And they weren't targeting people, they were targeting people that look like me and my wife. And that is very personal. So.
What can you tell us about the drought situation and water?
What can I tell everyone about the drought and water situation? Pray for rain. I mean, I think at the state level, there is a bill that came through, and unfortunately, it is what it is. A few years ago, the state passed at a statewide level. It was a citizens initiative to allow online sports betting. Do you guys remember that? Do you know where the tax income from online sports betting goes? Water. Did anybody know that? So all those Bet365 and DraftKings ads that you are seeing on TV, when people are making those purchases, the tax income goes directly to our water resources. It is one of the few mechanisms we have left at the state government to fund the Colorado Water Plan. Does anybody know what that is? The Colorado Water Plan is a strategic outlook for how Colorado is going to protect its water resources going forward. It identifies shovel-ready projects. It identifies projects and opportunities to fund, and the income from sports betting goes directly to fund the Colorado Water Plan. As we're seeing the rise of data centers, as we're seeing drought conditions, as we're seeing states that are suing Colorado to get more of the Colorado River, it is imperative that we continue to fund the Colorado Water Plan. And right now, our only mechanism to do that is through online sports betting. Until Tabor goes away, we simply don't have another mechanism. So that's what's happening at the state level. It's unfortunate, but here we are. Yes.
I have two questions. Will you explain exactly what chatbot is, and is it connected to GPT?
Yep. So.
And also with the data centers, I've heard that it's China or some country over there where they have a much better way of having the data centers not take up so much water and electricity and all that. And is it possible for the United States to do that?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. I'll get it. So the first one was a clarifying question on what a chatbot is, and is it connected to ChatGPT? A chatbot is ChatGPT. So a chatbot, by inherently its name, is when you're talking with ChatGPT, it's having a conversation. It's trained to talk like a human to you, which makes it even more insidious when they're targeting our children. So that's what the chatbot is. There was a data center part of this question is, aren't there other, in China, for example, isn't China doing data centers better by using less water? The Chinese government would say that because they're just not reporting its usage. I think truth in government is incredibly important, and I don't think you're getting that from the Chinese government. There is a country, and I visited this country on a trip for the Energy and Environment Committee, that does do data centers well, Denmark. They have made it a strategic imperative for that country to go green. Everything is green. They are double down on renewable energy, on data centers. So they use data centers as part of a district heating system. We actually have a district heating system here in Denver. It's downtown. There's a few high-rise buildings that are in district heating system. But they use the heat generated from data centers to heat the homes in the surrounding neighborhood. And they use all of their renewable energy, and they do have a gas backbone because they just can't get there completely. But a lot of their power is shared with Norway, which has a lot of hydro resources, and they have these huge underwater cables that provide renewable and energy across all the Nordic countries. So that's how they're able to do it. We don't have great water resources here in Colorado or hydro resources, so we just couldn't compete with that. But there's one country doing it.
What about charging them? I heard something too about some countries are charging the data centers to pay for some of the difference that the residents have to share in the expenses.
There's a lot of different models that data center companies are using to incentivize building one. So one example is giving free energy to nearby communities, or building out water infrastructure or roads and things like that. I don't think we've seen that in Colorado, but that has been a trend nationally. Yes, sir, in the back.
Very dear to my heart. My mom was the first woman to ever waterwork except it's created. She thought hard waterwork to get 2 floors. I don't realize 2 floors is massive. We're going to use our water rights. But Cardinals took over, did support this stuff went down. So a lot of what we see now is different. My question is, my mom always said, California, Arizona, and Nevada have got used to the water that we have not been using. Do you know if, because you're talking about future, we need to use that, but how we lost our water rights?
That's a detailed water law question, so I'm going to punt on that because I don't know the answer and I don't want to say anything. But I do know, just anecdotally. The question is, are the lower basin states, so Nevada, Arizona, and those folks who have been overusing their water, essentially taking Colorado's water rights. And I give my family members, and I'm looking at one right now, and my wife, because they're from Arizona, a lot of grief, because every time I would visit, I would see a pool in someone's backyard, and I'm like, what the heck? I had a very choice word about this, because we're asking people in Colorado to have water restrictions while people in Arizona have pools in every backyard, maybe 2 pools and a pool and a hot tub, who knows? So I'm very, very vocal on that issue. I honestly don't know, but I do know that we need to use the water resources in Colorado better, and it all starts with the Colorado Water Plan and making sure we're funding that. Because if we don't do that, wow, we're going to be in trouble. Yes, ma'am, way in the far back.
Do you know why data centers can't cool their water and reuse it?
The question is why can data centers not cool their water and reuse it? If you go back to my Denmark example, they are reusing it because in a district heating system, it's using hot water to heat homes. Kind of if you grew up on the East Coast and your radiator's working, it's got the same similar concept. We don't have the infrastructure for that here. Most of our communities are spread out. I think when you go to Denmark or a country that's more dense, they're able to do that more efficiently than we could. That's fair. Fair question. And when I see Excel, I'll ask them that question as well. But it's not something we deal with at the state, frankly. Yes, ma'am.
Are people in the legislature giving consideration about the issue of making AI corporations persons, like corporations have citizenship? Have a right to all of the power that they actually have. And people are starting to talk about how scary it would be if AI got so far ahead of us in what they were doing that we had no idea what.
The question is the state government focusing on the bad effects of AI? Whether or not AI can get ahead of us, it's going to replace us, the bad effects it's having on our communities? And the answer is yes. Yes to all of those. I think this really kicked off about 3 years ago. We had a huge AI bill that was also first in the nation and took 2 years to clean up. But it prevented AI systems from discriminating against people for job applications, for loans, for making major financial or major life decisions about people. AI would be liable if it was, frankly, racist. So that was a huge bill that took 3 years to clean up. Now the bill has landed in a spot where if a major financial or major decision about your life is being used by whether it's an insurance company or a bank or you name it, a job, they're using AI to make a decision about you, they have to notify you. And if they don't, there's a legal penalty for that. This past session, there were probably 4 or 5 different AI bills that were introduced, from scope of practice, from whether or not AI can provide mental health care my bill about chatbots. There's a bill about, there's so many AI bills, which were difficult under this governor, frankly, because you could only go so far. But we made a lot of progress. I think we cleaned up the big bill from 2 years ago. We passed the chatbot bill. There was another bill about making sure that AI could not provide mental health counseling, and it had to make disclosures about that. We passed that bill too. So the state government, like I said, we're getting to work. Unlike the federal government, we are trying to address these issues on the front end. Yes, ma'am.
What you said earlier about us praying about water, there are words now in the media like critical and, this far away. Don't we have any kind of plan? I mean, like trucks driving to Michigan, water back here, no plan? That just seems incomprehensible to me.
Well, we do have a plan. It's the Colorado Water Plan, and that's the plan I talked about, the strategic investment. We have been funding that at a certain level every year. We have to continue to fund it and probably supercharge the funding if we can find the funds to do it. So that is our plan. Yes, ma'am.
I read recently that San Diego is using salination as they are making so much water that they want to sell it. Maybe we could buy some of San Diego's.
When you buy those consumable liquid products from California, like gas, they tend to be very overpriced. So I don't know if we have the money to buy California water, especially if it's gone through a desalination process, which is incredibly costly and energy intensive. But I think all options are on the table. I was going to call on the gentleman in the back if I could. Yes, sir, in the back, red shirt. Maroon shirt.
I have a question about insurance. Thank you. We've been still here with insurance premiums.
Yep.
In fact, our HOAs, I haven't lived here long enough, but our HOAs are more than doubled in the last probably 5 years. So all we see is like State Farm and Allstate walking away with billions and billions of profits, and then we keep getting screwed with higher premiums. Is there anything being done in the state legislature about that?
Yes. The question was, and his words, not mine, but I'll re-say them. We're getting screwed with our insurance premiums. What are we doing about it? The answer is yes, and all roads lead back to Tabor. Unfortunately, when you don't have money to make investments, what we've seen is we're placing fees on certain insurance products. So what you're seeing here in HD6 is that insurance is costing more, whether it's for your house, whether it's for your boat. And we're doing that along the Front Range, and specifically this community, to subsidize the insurance costs for much smaller populations in the mountains. Last year, I sit on the finance committee, so I get to see a lot of these bills. And there were a lot of fees that were leveraged on this community to pay for wildfire mitigation for a mansion in, you name the luxury town. For me, I had to take a hard line on a lot of those because I thought to myself, I cannot vote with my conscience to raise the premiums for people in this district to pay for homes that people don't live in this district because they have made those decisions. So I have taken a fairly hard line on more fees for your insurance products. I've done that very intentionally because if you cannot insure your home, if you're a young person or a young family trying to get a home and you can't pay for the insurance, that's a missed opportunity to build wealth. That's a missed opportunity to start your life. So I take that very seriously with how much our insurance premium would cost. I think what insurance premiums, like affordable housing, there's no silver bullet solution. So we've taken a lot of different approaches. One of them is I did vote for this fee. It is a fee on insurance. It's like 35 cents that goes into a grant program. So we just had a hailstorm. How many of your neighbors, every time there's a hailstorm, get a new roof? A lot of them, I would imagine. So now what we're saying with this grant program is we're going to charge a small fee on home insurance. It's going to go into this pool, and when you get a new roof, you can apply to this grant program to have a more hail-resistant roof. So that doesn't happen twice a year or once every 5 years, because that is really driving the premiums that we're seeing here in Colorado is hail damage. Like that is the single greatest cause of your premium increases. So how we bend that cost curve away from hail damage is incredibly important. So that means creating and incentivizing more, resilient roofs. That means I don't know what you do with cars, but we're trying. We're trying.
My car insurance is like $59 for my 2 old cars, but I pay $90 for uninsured motorists. see a million cars with license plates that are expired, and the reason that they're not getting their cars registered is because they can't afford insurance. So I end up paying every month $90 for uninsured motorists. What can we do about this? I mean, there's tons of plates out there that are expired for years.
You know what we can do about it? Repeal Tabor. And here's why. No, I'm serious. Here's why. Because Tabor requires the state to charge fees. Go look at your car registration. How many different fees do you have? The average new car in Colorado costs between $50,000 and $60,000. When you go get that car registered, that is a $1,200 to $1,500 car registration. That is why you're seeing people running around without registration, because you are making a decision between buying food, caring for your kids, buying gas, or paying for your car registration. That is the trade-off that people are making for Tabor. I'm just being honest on that one. I'm just being honest. That is how many of you have lived in another state? I lived in Arizona where I met my wife. And you know how much it cost me to renew my car? $49. Car registration is $49. Like, that is materially different than what it costs here in Colorado, simply because we have to pay for roads, we have to pay for police, we have to pay for improvements. Oh, by the way, we really can't pay for roads because every new road we have is a toll road. Again, the pun is intended. All roads lead back to Tabor. It's got to go. Yes.
Exhibits. I usually encourage people to ignore these independent campaign committee mailers, but here's a couple of negative ones. So this is, if you want, both for you and your opponent, because I think they're both misleading.
Yep.
Would you like to respond to what's in these mailers?
Yeah, I guess I will. Let's provide some context. House District 6 is the central core of East Denver. Traditionally, over the last at least decade, this has been the most expensive and hard-fought seat in the entire legislature. You have to raise, on average, about $200 and, I think when I first ran for the seat 2 years ago, I had to raise over $200,000 myself, just to be competitive. And that isn't counting all of the outside spending. So I apologize in advance for all the mail you're getting, but that is from outside groups. Because this time around, I wasn't able to afford that much. You're going to get 3 mailers from me. You've already received 1. You'll get 2 more. That's it. So anything beyond that, and you'll see, and you'll know what mine is, because it says paid for by Camacho for Colorado, registered agent, me. And I can guarantee this is just the way I look at life. It's the way I look at politics. Every single one of those mailers is talking about the positive things that I've done for this district, that is putting forward, because I have a great record to run on, and I'm really proud of it. So if you ever receive a campaign communication that is negative, that is not, in my view, showcasing the democratic values that I ran on, it's not from me, because I've made that commitment. I will not do it. There's an old adage in politics, if you're explaining, you're losing, but you ask the question. So if you provide a mailer here. Okay. So how many of you have received this mailer here? Okay. I don't know what they're talking about. Teamed up with Republicans to kill affordable housing by protecting multi-million-dollar vacation homes in Aspen. So what I assume they're talking about is the vacancy tax bill. So this was a bill that died in committee. It died in committee because 3 Democrats voted to kill the bill. And here's why. This was a bad bill for House District 6. House District 6 has one of the largest concentration of renters in the entire state. It has a significant older adult population. Under this bill, there are no carve-outs for apartments. So vacant apartments in House District 6 could be considered vacant property. Now, if you are an apartment building, and let's just easy math here. You have 10 apartments. 7 of them are filled and 3 are not. And you're assessed a vacancy tax on those 3. Who do you think's paying for that? Think the landlord's paying for that? Or you think the tenant's paying for that? This bill directly increased the cost of housing in HD6, and I voted no. And I'll do it every single time. This bill also did not have a carve-out for accidental ownership, or if you were sick and you couldn't live in your house and it was vacant. It was unclear how you even declare a house is vacant. It was unclear how we were going to afford having every single treasurer across the state update their systems to pay for this system, to track vacant homes and then assess different tax rates. Not to mention, what that does to the resale market of a home, because if your home was vacant and now it's sold, but it's at a different tax rate, how is that competitive to buyers? There's so many issues with this bill. It sounded great on paper. Everyone wants more affordable housing. Implementation was severely lacking. That's why 3 Democrats voted against, and I did too. Sorry. Sided with Republicans to defend credit card swipe fees. They're talking about the swipe fee bill that was just vetoed. Does anybody know what a swipe fee is? Every time you swipe that credit card, it charges the business who's swiping it, depending on whatever brand credit card you have, between 3 and 4.5%. What this bill wanted to do, and it was pushed by proponents, by restaurants, and I love our local restaurants. I've done a lot of work to save our restaurants. I care very deeply that you go to a restaurant in HD6 and it costs $26 for a hamburger because our math is out of whack. It costs too much for labor, it costs too much for buildings, it costs too much for all these things. So how do we save our restaurants? Our restaurants wanted this bill because under this bill they were allowed to essentially eliminate that 3 to 4% on taxes. How do you do that when you're swiping your card? What this bill required was for Colorado to be an outlier, not in the nation, in the globe. We would be the only jurisdiction in the entire world that would allow taxes to be cut off from your credit cards. There's another bill in Arizona that went through, but it didn't look like our bill. It had something similar, but it was different. So now you have 2 states that don't look like the rest of the world for a global payment network. What do you think that does to Colorado? If you are a global payment network, are you the unknown factor of this was so high because it was unclear to me whether or not you'd have to pay taxes with cash or bring a checkbook so you could pay taxes when you go to Walmart or you go to wherever you go. It was unclear to me. It was also very clear to me that the state would have to defend this law with limited resources. So you're talking about a huge lawsuit taking away from K-12 and higher ed funding that we knew was going to happen. So I voted no. I voted no, and the bill was ultimately vetoed because this bill really came down to, if you are a big retailer, think Walmart, Target, you save tons of money if you're able to carve off taxes from your daily sales. If you are a small restaurant in Denver, not so much. I think the average savings over a year for a restaurant in Denver was like $700 or something like that. Can you imagine what it was for Walmart? Much different. That's why I voted no on that bill. And then last one, sold access to corporate Republican dark money group to openly give a donation menu to lobbyists for coal power industry, for-profit prisons, and more. I never did that. What I assume they're talking about, which is essentially what my opponent keeps talking about, is I went to a conference in Vail, Colorado last October. As a legislator, you're invited to go to hundreds of conferences every year. And before I go to any conference, I ask myself 2 questions. 1, will this conference, is the subject of this conference something that will help me serve you better? The answer to this one was yes, because the subject of this conference was issues in Colorado related to education, healthcare, AI, small business recovery, and some other key issues. So yes, that checks the box. Second question is, does it comply with Amendment 41? And if you don't know what Amendment 41 is, it is a citizen-led initiative that limits how much an elected official can receive in remunerations for a conference or for anything else. So what you typically do is the process is you go ask an attorney, is this Amendment 41 compliant? I did both of those things. And I got satisfactory answers to both. Unfortunately, there are groups out there, some that send mailers, that didn't like that, that don't like me, and I don't know why, you'd have to ask them. So they filed an ethics complaint. They filed an ethics complaint last year saying that this conference was improperly paid for. So that ethics complaint has been pending for over a year, and they haven't even started the investigation because that committee is underfunded. So now they get to run attack ads about a conference in Vail that I went to last year forever, because I don't know when that investigation is ever going to get cleared up. But I can tell you this, I did every single thing right. I have done nothing wrong. I follow the same process every time. And I'm not infallible. If that independent ethics commission comes back and says, Sean, you should have done something different, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to make it right. It'll never happen again. But I don't think that's what's going to happen because I followed every rule and I have done nothing wrong. So you're going to see lots of mail about a conference in Vail. And that's what happened.
With this this administration wanting to really clamp down on constitutional voter rights, are our voting rights, like, mail-in ballots, safe in Colorado with what Trump is trying to do? I'm concerned about the interim elections, obviously.
So in the state of Colorado, our elections are run at the county level. So our county clerks are supposed to have contingency plans. I've heard some of our candidates, I'll name one in particular, Amanda Gonzalez, she was a county clerk in Jefferson County. Part of her discussion is about what Jefferson County is going to do. What their contingency plan is if the federal government cannot accept U.S. mail. They don't go into many details because you don't want to give the opposition your playbook before you do it. But I do know, just from interacting with the other elected officials, that counties are really looking at this and what they're going to have to do to make sure that our voting system is safe. I believe it's safe. We in Colorado are incredibly lucky to have a gold standard voting system, and I think that will continue. I don't think that is at risk. Yeah. I'm going to the side of the room. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I already asked you a question. Do you mind if I let her ask the question? Okay. Sorry about that. I called on the same person twice. Yeah. Tabor is the taxpayer Bill of Rights. Sounds great, right? You have a Bill of Rights for taxes. So at its core, what it says is any level of government, whether that's city, or state, county, cannot raise any tax, any single one, without voter approval. Sounds great, right? You get to vote on your taxes. Absolutely. Sounds wonderful. It also limits the amount of money state government can have, and it is purposely about 10% less than the money we need to run state government. And the idea in the 90s, this was a Republican-pushed bill, or a constitutional amendment, that essentially became a corporate tax hole factory. Has anybody, seen? It was fairly recent. I wrote an op-ed in the Denver Post about this. The city of Lakewood. The city of Lakewood had assessed a tax on landlines, and then landlines no longer existed, so they moved that tax over to cell phones. Did they get voter approval for that? The Colorado Supreme Court said no. So what did that do? That allowed an out-of-state corporation that ran cell service in Colorado to get a tax break for 10 years. And the city of Lakewood had to pay that back because they didn't get voter approval for that. That is a tangible example of how Tabor is a tax break factory for corporations, especially out-of-state ones. I think the other thing that Tabor gives you a false impression on is, that first part where you get to vote on the bills that you really care about? Do you know how much money it takes to get something on the ballot? Do you think someone who's going to spend $10 million is going to put something on the ballot that's in your interest? What they have really done is disenfranchised you. Because instead of being able to vote on a tax through me, your elected representative, now you're putting that in the hands of someone who can put that on the ballot financially and run a campaign on it and talk all of you into voting for it. And I'm not saying, and please don't get me wrong, I trust voters. I think voters do the best they can with the information they have, but our system, especially under Tabor, is broken. What we are seeing is Medicaid costs increase annually at a rate of inflation higher than Tabor allows us to get. So we're continually about 6% under every year. That's why next year you're probably going to see another $1.5 billion cut from the state budget, because our Medicaid costs continue to skyrocket and the amount of money we can take under Tabor just doesn't catch up. So what does that mean tangibly? If you want to think about it, that means the most vulnerable in our community no longer have health care, because we'll either have to reduce benefits at the Medicaid level or kick people off Medicaid. And how does that manifest itself if you live in Denver? Our unhoused folks. A lot of them have mental health issues, and a lot of them are Medicaid. If we can no longer cover that, what does that look like for the city of Denver? If we have working families that get sick and can no longer go and get primary care, and they have to get care in an emergency room, and it costs more money for Denver Health to fund that, Denver Health is going to go bankrupt. That's what that looks like.
Also long-term care.
And long-term care. All of these issues are compounding under Tabor. And I don't want to be that guy, but I'll be the guy. I have been the leading voice on this issue in the legislature for the last 2 years, so much so that I got a corny nickname called the Tabor Assassin. I was walking in front of my Republican colleagues who was defending Tabor, and he pointed in front of the camera and said, "There goes the Tabor assassin. He wants to take away your right to vote on your taxes." And I said, no. I want to re-enfranchise my constituents to be able to vote and have someone vote in their interest for once in the last 30 years. Now, this is supposed to be your time, but I can keep going. Like I said, yes.
I don't know if this is for this district. Is anyone doing any work on agriculture to stop toxic spray on food?
On food?
On farms?
Yes, we just passed a bill. My good friend, oh my gosh. Oh, sorry. Are we doing anything to prevent agriculture spraying on land? So it's tangentially related. My good friend, oh gosh, she's gonna get really mad because I forgot her last name. I can see her face. She's great. I'll get back to you. She passed a bill with my good friend Rep Morrow from Pueblo to allow essentially a new kind of recycling program for pesticides and fertilizers that are left on agricultural land. Because what we're seeing is it's really hard to get rid of those, excess fertilizer products. And what ends up happening is they end up staying on land and then leaching into the water table. So we passed a bill this year that would provide some relief to be able to have a statewide collection effort for those fertilizers, so we can get them off our land and stop poisoning our water table. So that was a great bill. Rep. Karen McCormick and Rep. Morrow passed that bill, and I was happy to vote for it. Don't tell her I forgot her name; she'll be really mad. Yes, property tax. What about property tax? So the question was, what are you doing about property tax? The business community was able to come together and I'm just paraphrasing, essentially pass a statewide initiative to make people pay more. So here's what happened. We, as a state, voted to get rid of the Gallagher Amendment. And the Gallagher Amendment, what that did is enshrined in state law that if you are a commercial business, you will pay a certain rate, and if you are residential, you'll pay a much smaller rate. What we were seeing during that Gallagher vote was that the rates, and if you remember how many people we had coming to Colorado and home prices were through the roof? They're still kind of through the roof. The taxes on multi-million-dollar homes were very small compared to a strip mall. Like, just take the one out here. The strip mall was paying essentially 60% of the costs for fire districts and K-12 in that county. So what Gallagher said was individual counties can then reapportion that tax and just take it out of state law, or state, I think it was a constitutional amendment at that point. It took out the defined percentages for commercial and residential, and what you've been seeing as a consequence of that is since that protection went away for residential property, your property taxes have been raising. And that was essentially an effort to create more of an equitable tax scheme between residential and non-residential properties. And it needs some cleanup. I get it. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you, and yeah, and I'm really sorry that happened to you. And the comment was the property taxes are going so high that people are getting priced out of their homes. And you're right, it's happening. And we've got to do something at the state level. We've got to do something to modernize our tax system, because the way we're doing it right now is creating so many inefficiencies, so many things that here's a perfect example of how outdated our tax system is. Does anybody remember voting for healthy school meals for all? We miscalculated how much that program would cost or how many local school districts would take advantage of it. So we essentially collected more money than the voters allowed. I think it was like $2 million or something like that. So we had to run a statewide ballot initiative to ask voters if we can keep $2 million. Do you know how much money that probably cost us? I don't have the exact numbers, but printing statewide ballots, having an ad campaign to tell people, can we keep $2 million, probably cost $2 or $3 million. But our system required us to do that stupidity, that exercise in stupidity. And again, I'll be the guy, all roads go back to Tabor. Yes, ma'am.
Talking about the taxes, has it ever occurred to anyone that maybe the states are getting too small a percentage of our money, and the federal government is just cutting our money out and giving less to the states, maybe
they should be taking less from us individually, and our state should be paying more on our tax.
Yes, and I voted for that bill. Last year, we made an investment. We gave the Attorney General's office $4 million to fund special lawsuits to sue the federal government to get our money back. And I wish Phil was here, he could tell you how much money he saved. But we have had a 10x return on that $4 million investment, at least, to get federal money that we were owed from the Trump administration because we sued and we funded it. I know it doesn't exactly answer your question, but yes, the federal government is not treating Colorado fairly, and we're taking action to push back.
I guess I'm saying I think in general, because especially some tax these days, I'm an independent, but I feel like we are having taxation without representation on the federal level. And I'd rather be giving more than the small percentage to Colorado that gets, and giving a larger percentage of my income money, because the federal government that's not giving it back to it. Why are states not getting their share?
The question for Senator Bennett when he comes.
Yeah, I'm going to punch Senator Bennett because I'm sure he voted or. You asked him that question. The question was, why at the federal level are we not making sure Colorado's getting more of the pie? That's a Senator Bennett question, for sure. Because we at the state, we're doing our part. Anybody else? I can get off the mic. See, this is a great strategy. I just answer questions until like everyone gets tired out. So I appreciate that. I am running for re-election. You should see your ballots in the mail. Here's my final pitch. This has been one of the most meaningful jobs I've had, and I've had such a great time doing it. I think I've made a huge impact in the lives of this community, and I want to apologize in advance. This race is going to get uglier. You're going to see more mail. You're going to see, it's going to be exhausting. I'm already exhausted. I'm really tired, guys. I think our campaign has already knocked over 3,000 doors since the end of session. We're out doing the work because it is that important. When you can save and make a huge difference in your community, like I'm right there. Count me in every single time. I would love your support because I would love to continue to do this work. I think we're on the cusp of doing something amazing with our tax system, and it's going to require really thoughtful people to think of what's next, and I want to be part of that conversation. I really do.